Hi and welcome everybody. I am joined today by Cameron from Story. Hi Cameron, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me.
I would love to give you a chance to just explain a little bit about Story and then we'll really get stuck into your journey so far.
Sure, so we are a care coordination and family engagement platform used by senior care providers. So staff use our platform to record care and families from around the world can engage and see what happens day to day in care facilities.
And how long have you guys been going on for?
So we've been going for about 3 years so far. We started off in Scotland, expanded to the rest of the UK, and now we've expanded to the US in the last year or so.
And what has that journey looked like for you as a founder? What has your kind of team size been over that period of time?
Sure, so the team size is fluctuated in different stages of our journey. We found that over time, cutting down the team size into the number of people you really need can be very beneficial. and that's the stage we're at. That's the stage we're at right now. So we've got a fairly compact team. It's the size of team we need to service the clients we have at the moment. But over the next 6 to 12 months, that's going to change considerably as we expand more across the US.
So our whole aim this week, and we've been having a lot of chat about it, and I'd love to kind of get into it with you, has been that idea of pulling back the curtain and really talking about the realities of startup life. And part of that is how we handle failure, how we talk about it, how we as founders cope with reality versus the vision that we have and the vision that often we've been pitching every day to people who we would like to give us their money. How do you kind of sit with that in terms of your journey? Has it been a straight arrow? Have you always known this is where you're going to end up? Like, what's that been like for you?
So I don't think it's ever really a straight arrow for any startup. That kind of journey takes different turns, sometimes unexpected turns. It has been quite a journey for us in terms of fundraising, in terms of product, in terms of literally where we are in the world as well. We were lucky enough to start off with a grant from Scottish Enterprise back in the day, and that really helped us kind of figure out what we wanted to do, to figure out what actually worked and what didn't with our product. In terms of actually then getting investment is really difficult for anything that you're doing. It's also particularly difficult depending on where you are geographically. Because we started off in Scotland, we found it was a little bit harder in terms of, sorry, I'm just getting a call. We found it was a little bit harder in terms of getting and finding investors to engage with investors in the Scottish space. And also the valuations considered are varied greatly in Scotland compared to the rest of the world. So that was tricky. But through perseverance, we did find some brilliant angel investors who really knew the tech space, that worked very closely with us and gave us really good feedback. And through that network, we got introduced to other larger investors that would have been kind of harder to find if we were just starting out by yourself. But to get to that stage, you really do need to grind yourself and go out to networking events, really do things that are kind of against the grain of what you might want to do to find other investors that can be beneficial for you.
Right, and often those activities that you described, so in your case that's like flying to the States, it's pitching, it's networking, it's getting outside of your geographical location and sometimes outside your comfort zone, that can feel like a distraction. I've got a product, like I'm trying to build a product, I'm trying to solve a problem, but ultimately I guess you can't do that without that funding.
Yeah, and also I think what's really important is to have really candid conversations. You've got to remember that these investors are just people, and they are some of them anyway really like getting stuck in and solving problems with you. And I think what a lot of startups do oftentimes is try and present the best picture possible because they think an investor will be put off if they know anything bad. The reality is if you've got a good investor that's worth their salt, they'll know that some things are good and some things are bad, and they ultimately want to help you. So giving them the kind of full story, depending on who they are and their experience, I think is really important and will pay dividends later on.
That's really valuable to hear, the way that you've gone about not even just initially expanding that network so that you can meet those investors, but then I'm hearing you talk about fostering relationships, about actually creating something that is a partnership, that you're getting advice, that you're getting feedback, and you're helping with that journey. Is that something that happens like across the board with all your investors? Do you have a mixture? Like, what are your shareholders like in terms of their engagement with you guys?
Definitely varied in terms of what our investors are like. I would say maybe it's a 50-50 split in terms of the ones that engage. Keep getting calls.
Hopefully it's not investors.
No, it's not.
I would completely understand if you had to end this Zoom.
That's fine. I would say split, because you get some investors that are super engaged with everything that you actually put out, and more often than not, it's the investors we have that have been founders previously. We do also have kind of investors that haven't really built tech businesses themselves, but they've been very successful in whatever they've done, whether it's real estate or other companies, that might take a more of a standoffish approach to support. But through the tools that we do use, which I'm sure we'll get onto, we can still see that people are reading it, despite the fact that they might not be engaging as much.
Right, and that's kind of what I want to dig into. And even before you describe the tools, which I'm interested to learn what you choose to use, but tell me about your journey with that and the strategy of, I have information and I want to keep other people informed. What were your thought process in terms of, this is my data, I want control over it, or I want to know who's looking at what? What were your kind of, how has that journey changed as your kind of relationship with investors has developed?
Sure. So I think it's important to be very kind of metrics driven with your updates, but figuring out which metrics work for you are equally as important. So looking at we really looked at what is best practice out there for investor updates, first of all, and then best practice with kind of what matters in our industry. So when we put out an investor update, we want to tell our investors what's actually happened in the last month. We do it every month fairly diligently, and we'll have the highs, the lows, what actually happened, any key points, some of the big things that may be happening next month, and right at the top of that are key metrics.
And so when you send that out, what kind of, how have you gathered that information? Is it just yourself who's written that? Is it kind of team contributed? How have you pulled that together?
So I pull all that data up myself at the end of the month. I track a lot of it in spreadsheets. It could be Google Sheets or things like ProfitWell. And then I just put it onto pages. I do pretty much everything on my Mac, put it onto pages, generate it as a PDF, and then I use the tools to actually send it out there.
Okay, so tell me about that. When have you forever tracked it? Have you ever been thinking about that analytic feedback loop, or did that start to happen when you started doing that with your own business, right? You're like, I want to know what my users are doing. Actually, I want to know what my investors are doing when they read my updates.
Sure. So there was definitely a shift for us when we became a lot more analytical, when we started getting more data, and we figured out, we need to be measuring this data and doing something with it. And I guess around about that time, we had the same shift with what I'm telling our investors to. So what we've been using, I think after the third or fourth update I sent out, because I started off for the first 3 or 4 just sending emails. And then beyond that, we started using things like DocSend.
Right, so what does DocSend do and how do you use it?
Sure. So I've written that Pages document. I generate it as a PDF. I then upload that to DocSend. And DocSend is basically a platform whereby you can manage documents that are being sent out to individuals. You can generate a document from a PDF that you upload to DocSend. You can then send out that URL link in an email. Individuals click on that link, and you can then measure what happens when people click on that link, you can measure the number of people that actually click on it, where they are, their engagement, how long they're actually spending on each document, each page. And we found it super useful, not only for investor updates, but also for things like pitch decks, even sales decks. We're sending that out to customers as well.
And so what do you like about that process? What kind of power does that give you?
Lets me know people are actually reading the update.
And why does that matter?
Which is, well, you want to know that you're getting ROI in your time that you've spent.
That's it.
And also you want to make sure that that method of contacting your investors is the right method, because there might be a better way of doing it that I don't know yet, but I can see that the vast majority of our investors do read the update. I can see that they normally read it within, a few hours of me sending it as well, depending on where they are in the world at the time. But that data to me is really useful. Yeah.
And what is particularly tricky about it? Is there anything about that process that you don't like?
So I would like a system whereby a lot of the data is kind of integrated. So I don't have to find that data that I've got, pull it from Google Sheets, put that into Pages, and then extrapolate that into DocSend. Obviously, there's always going to be some subjective things that I myself have to type up in any monthly update. So you can't automate everything, but if you could automate some of those steps, that would definitely save me quite a bit of time.
And in terms of the investor side of that, so I guess thinking more about the investor as their user experience. So you've described how you as a founder share information, you get what you need from that. From an investor's perspective, what's their kind of experience of interacting and engaging through the DocSend?
Sure. So I think it's super simple, really, because they click on the link, they could be viewing it on their iPhone, on their desktop, and they're reading a PDF page which has key metrics and key information that they need to know. And from the feedback that we've had so far, they seem to like that. I guess the one thing that could be a lot better there is they could have, for example, graphs tracking different metrics over time instead of just the figures and the monthly update. I think that could be something that could benefit them. But I think the user experience, or the biggest UX benefit of that, is that it's simple. It's one link that they click and it's a page for them to read that they can read in their commute or wherever, whatever they're doing.
Right, like wherever they choose to catch up on your information and your data.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So in terms of other groups of people that you might keep up to date, are there investors potentially for future rounds, or VCs that you just kind of send updates that maybe aren't as detailed as your investor updates? Are there different types of groups of people like that you have?
Yeah, so I know some companies have a shareholder update, and then they have a everyone else advisors update where they leave out some things. My approach is to keep things fairly simple. We just send out one update that goes out to shareholders and close advisors, potential investors in the future. So I put everyone in the same bucket and just think, okay, we've got full transparency here. Everyone can see what's happening in the same update.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, thank you for describing that process. That's really useful for me. So what's next for Story? What are your main challenges over the next 6 months?
So we are expanding in the US, going state by state, really. And we're about to fairly aggressively start hiring people in the States and expanding on our product over time. And I guess it's managing all that and managing upcoming investors as well. We're about to launch a new round solely in the States. So we're gearing up for that at the moment.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Cheers, Cameron.
Thank you. Bye-bye.